Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Kyla Moe. I am the Deputy Director at Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. So thank you for joining us today on the NOFO kind of grantee kickoff meeting. So if you could just please, if you haven't already, introduce yourself in the chat, just name an organization or agency that you're representing today. Just some kind of general housekeeping, please make sure you're on mute. We will have time for question and answer at the end. So there may be opportunity for you to come off mute at that time to ask a question. You can also ask questions during the webinar using the chat feature. And Sean Hayes from our team is going to be monitoring the chat. So he'll either answer them right away or he'll flag them for me to answer either in the moment or at the end. And then we will be, this webinar is being recorded and we will post it on our website after. And I also will send out and post these PowerPoint slides as well. So just kind of an overview of today. We'll just be doing a high-level overview of what is the NOFO, what it all entails, and then we'll be going over for, there's two different kind of sections or types of branches that we'll be going over. So we'll be going over renewal projects and any changes that we will be implementing this year. And so the renewal projects are those agencies and programs that are currently receiving CoC funds. And then we will have a section for new program and new project applications. And those are for anybody that is not previously or not currently a CoC funded program, but may be interested in applying. I'll provide some information to you in that section as well. And then we'll kind of go over the timeline of when everything is due. And then again, we'll leave time at the end for any Q&A, but again, feel free as I'm presenting, if you have any questions, to go ahead and put those in the chat, and I will try to just address them in the moment, or Sean can address them as well. Okay, so to get started, MDHI's role, we are the CoC, and so part of the CoC means we are the collaborative applicant, excuse me, for our community. And so what that means is we are the stewards for the 7-county region that MDHI supports to submit the application to HUD for their funding. And so what that looks like is we work on the consolidated application. So that's the main application that we submit. And then we also do the project ranking. And so that's required by HUD. And it's basically, scoring all of the renewal and new projects and ranking them in order. And then we also oversee the applications for the individual projects. So for HUD planning, for HMIS, and coordinated entry. And so there's, again, the big application, but then you all are responsible for doing your individual applications. And that is what is submitted to the NOFO committee to do the project ranking and scoring. Just some kind of history. We currently have 11 funded CoC agencies, and these are the agencies that we currently fund, and there's a total of 19 programs. So that is, just kind of our current portfolio. Between those programs, the funding is kind of split out, but as you can see, the majority of the funding goes to the PSH projects. So the PSH projects get the majority of the funding, and then we do have some rapid rehousing. We have one safe haven and one transitional housing project as well. And then, like I mentioned, MDHI directly has some grants to cover HMIS, HUD planning, and coordinated entry. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the 11 programs that we currently fund, how the funding is spread out. So this year, HUD just, as of yesterday, released the individual CoC allocations. And so basically what that is it's a guide that says, this is how much money that we can apply for. And so this year they are only awarding us 90% of our annual renewal demand, which is pretty much 93% of all of our current CoC funded agencies they're only allowing us, for tier 1, they're only allowing us to apply for up to 93%. That is a decrease from last year. Last year, they allowed us to apply for up to 95%. So it is a 2% decrease from last year. And so then what that means is just, there's a chance that some of our renewal projects will have to either straddle or be placed in tier 2 based on scoring. So the amount that we can apply for this year for tier 1 is a little over, $27 million. Tier 2, which is the difference between, what they allowed us to apply for in tier 1 and our max award, is a little over $2 million. And so that tier 2 will encompass any new project applications we get, and then again, any of the current renewal projects that we're not able to fund under the tier 1 category. For DB bonus, so this is a bonus that we can apply for agencies that serve domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence, and so that is 1.3 million. And then the CoC HUD planning grant, they actually increased this year, and so this is a grant that MDHI can apply for, and does apply for, and they increased it to 1.4, almost 1.5 million. So the kind of just process is, project applications must be submitted to the CoC, and we must rate and rank all of them according to a priority list. The applications are submitted, and I'll get into a little bit more detail further in the slides, but they're not, when it says submitted to the CoC, we have you all submit them to the CoC using the eSNAPS portal. And so that is the portal that HUD has, and I will, like, again, if you're new and not used to that, I do have some slides that'll kind of walk us through the eSNAPS and resources on how to do that. But all applications are submitted to us through the eSNAPS portal, and they are due on August 28th to the CoC, because we have to have everything put together, the package, everything approved and submitted to HUD by September 28th. So getting started, I would, we highly recommend that you read the full HUD notice and utilize the guidance that they are provided on their website. So HUD does have some pretty lengthy guidance, and so Sean put in the chat a link to the HUD competition page, which provides the links to the notice, and then also any guidance documents. They have not yet opened eSNAPS. We have been told it'll be open by the end of the month, which is next Monday. So you'll see, if you go to the competition page for guidance, the detailed application instructions that walk you through the questions have not been posted yet. And so those will be forthcoming. So just kind of keep checking back on that link to see when that's updated. If you are a new applicant and you're thinking of applying, I recommend going to that HUD website, following the directions to get to the eSNAP portal, and getting started. There's some requirements in the notice of stuff that you will be required to have before you can submit the application. So I would recommend, if you are a new project that'll be applying to get started today on making sure you meet some of those requirements. So even though the portal's not open yet, it does have a list of requirements that you need. So sometimes those take a little bit longer to get done. So I recommend doing that section now. These are just kind of some more kind of process questions or process flow. So even though the NOFO committee will reviews the applications and scores them and ranks them, HUD also will go in and review each project application. So, the CoC is making the priority list as our recommendation. So this is our recommendation of the ranking and the scores, but HUD can come in and kind of override that. So you just want to make sure that in the notice that you read through all of HUD's kind of threshold and requirements documents. Because we would hate for you to, be recommended from funding from us, but for some reason, HUD may flag something that we may not have caught, and take you out and make you not eligible. So I would just, again, highly recommend that you read through the full notice. And it just kind of, this is kind of goes over about some, each project's narrative. These are just kind of some of the stuff that HUD looks through, that, all of the proposed program participants are eligible for the program type that you selected. So if you select that you're going to do a PSH project, just make sure that, the participants you are going to serve are, PSH eligible, and that is a question in the application. And then any information that you provide in the narrative, kind of is consistent with the program requirements in the rule, that you answer the questions fully, that, it's, I don't think you can do bullet points, but it's kind of like answer each question, make sure if the question has 3 parts, make sure you're answering all 3 parts of the question. And then that the data that you provide in various parts of the application are consistent. So if you say, in one section that you're serving 50 households, make sure that that's consistent throughout, especially in your budget. And then there is a list of attachments that HUD will require that you attach to the application. And so that's some of the stuff that you can be getting ready now, before the portal is open, and that's listed in the notice as well. So again, just making sure that everything is complete as possible, you meet the eligibility requirements, so that you're not, again, deemed ineligible maybe for something that may have been overlooked. Okay, so this section is specific for renewals. So those are, again, the projects that are currently funded by CoC funded. These are just some of the changes. So some key updates, just kind of reminders, and then some changes that the NOFO committee and the CoC board of directors have implemented for this year's process. So as like in previous years, all of the scores will be derived from the APRs that are submitted to SAGE. And so we go into the SAGE portal and we pull out your most recently submitted APR, and that is what we use for scoring. I have already reached out to anybody that may be missing an APR, or the APR is in rejection status. So just kind of, just in future years, just, realizing that the data that you do submit in those APRs is what's going to be used for scoring. So making sure that's up to date when you do pull it and submit it to HUD. Last year's process, we changed the method of scoring, or the method that we used in calculating the scores. We are going to use that same process again this year. And so what that process is it's a dynamic scoring. So basically what that means is we will take whatever the APR percentage for that metric says, and that's the percentage of the points that you will receive. So for example, on the increased income metric, if you scored on your APR, 64% of your participants have increased income, then you will be scored 64% of the 10 points. So you would get 6.4 points for that metric. So that's similar to how we did it last year. Previously, we did kind of a threshold where we took all of similar projects together and kind of came up with high and lows, and that's how we scored it. We changed that method last year, and it actually a little bit more accurately reflects, kind of what's going on. So we are going to keep the dynamic scoring again this year. Some scoring elements changes. So housing first will be removed as a scoring element and is now a threshold requirement. So what this means is your program has to be using a housing first approach in order to even be eligible to apply. So if your program is not using a housing first approach currently, but you're interested in potentially changing that and becoming housing first, you can reach out to MDHI and we can help you with that, but you will have to be housing first in order to apply. We are going to add a new scoring element around racial equity. So if you remember back in fiscal year 21, we asked you all to submit your racial equity assessments, and we did not score them at the time. We will be sending you a follow-up survey, follow-up questions in regards to your racial equity assessment. I will be sending those out when I send out the scorecards. And then we ask that you submit those, and then the NOFO committee will review the answers to this racial equity component, and they will use that to score you on the new racial equity component. And then another new process improvement this year is, if your APR was not submitted to HUD by the due date, or if your APR is in rejection status and feedback has not been provided to HUD within 30 days, there will be a 5-point reduction of your total score. So that is just new again this year. Is HUD requires that everybody submits an APR and submits it on time. And so it's really critical that you guys meet those deadlines. And so if you're not meeting those deadlines, we will be start reducing points. Sorry, thank you. APR is annual performance report. So that is a report that is due to HUD annually based on your grant period. And so that is something for any new projects, a requirement as well is you must use HMIS. And so the APR is a report that you can pull out of HMIS that is then used to submit to HUD annually based on your grant period dates. So that's kind of the scoring element changes. So we'll be dropping one scoring element, adding another one, and then again, kind of looking at just making sure that you all are meeting the requirements by submitting the APR on time. The overall kind of some of the process changes that will be implemented this year is only HMIS and coordinated entry grants will be considered essential. All other projects will be ranked according to their score. And so what this means is pretty much the grants that only the CoC can apply for, so the HMIS and coordinated entry grants, will be automatically ranked into tier 1. All other projects will be ranked based on their scores. And so this is a little bit of change from previous years, as in previous years, some of our special populations were automatically placed into tier 1 regardless of how they score. We are changing that process this year, where all projects outside of the HMIS and coordinated entry grants will be ranked according to their scores. First time renewals are projects that have not yet submitted data to HUD. In previous years, we ranked them in between renewal projects and new projects. And given the fact that HUD the last couple of years has not awarded us 100% of our renewal funds, what this meant is our first time renewals were being placed into tier 2, which then could put them at risk of funding. And so given that they haven't had a chance to have a full year of data and we couldn't evaluate them appropriately, the committee did not feel that that was fair. And so the new process will be first time renewals or projects that haven't been able to submit data yet, given HUD contracting delays, will be ranked between the higher and lower scoring projects in tier 1 using a 20% threshold. So, for example, if the highest scoring project is a 90, we will take 20% of that threshold and score the first time renewal between, the 70, 72 mark. So that'll put them kind of in tier 1, but in the middle of the kind of higher and lower scoring projects. So those are kind of the key updates that we'll be making. Everything else is staying the same. And so the next couple slides, I'll go over just kind of what staying the same means. But if your program was directly impacted by any of these scoring changes, you should have already received a message from me. And I know that I'm working, with several of you on this. But if you have any questions, you can direct questions to the NOFO email, which I will have up on the screen at the end. So if you have any questions on if you're, how these process change may impact your program, feel free to send us a question. So this is the scoring tool with the new changes. And so, like I said, outside of the racial equity and housing first change, everything else stayed the same. So we will still be looking at housing retention results. The percent project leavers exit homelessness, housing utilization, the percent of adults who have increased income, the percent of adults who have increased non-earned income, the percent of adults who retained or acquired non-cash benefits, your data quality score, data timeliness, one home participation, So one home participation is one that is not on the APR. So this is one that we will pull outside the system. And basically what the requirement is on this one is that 100% of your referrals should be coming through one home unless you have a previously approved exception. So when I send out the scorecards, if you are not at 100%, I will be sending you guys a list of clients that we don't show in our system have referral connection. A process change that we did at MDHI last year or 2 years ago is we are monitoring those on an ongoing basis. So we're monitoring those on a monthly basis. So we should have hopefully caught anybody that may have slipped through the cracks and already communicated that to you. But in case we did miss anybody, or if that didn't, if we sent out the report and it didn't get corrected, I will be sending out another report with the scorecards that would list any clients that are not currently connected to one home referral. We will then still be looking at grant expenditures, and that is on the APR. And then the racial equity assessment is going to be outside of the APR, like I mentioned, and that'll be a follow-up couple questions that we will have you complete and submit. So that is for the renewals. So kind of going into new project applications. So again, these are any projects that are not currently CoC funded that can apply for funding this year. And so we can submit new projects created through either reallocation, and what reallocation means is if there's any funds being taken away from any of the current renewal projects, either by not spending down their grants or by voluntary reallocation, that pool of money will be added to the, a little over $2 million that we do have for the CoC bonus money. And so that's kind of like the tier 2 money. So basically what we do is we kind of, the NOFO committee, reviews all applications and ranks them, and then, until we run out of money. And we may also, the NOFO committee may also go back and ask some of the new project applications to reduce their budget in order to fit those guidelines. But some of the only eligible project types that can submit new project applications are permanent housing, and so that includes permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, or joint TA, or the joint TH and PH rapid rehousing projects. So at this time, that's the only those are only eligible projects that can compete, can apply for this funding. Last year, it was opened up. We had that separate NOFA that was unsheltered, which did, street outreach and emergency shelters. But this is the annual program NOFA, and so it's only eligible for these project types.
Kyla, we have a question. Only $2 million of all allocated funds are designated for new, or just to clarify, only $2 million are designated for new projects, and the rest is for previously funded projects.
That is correct. Unless there is reallocation from some of that previous. So that is where the HUD, HUD will only allow us to submit new projects that are created through either reallocation or using our CoC bonus. And so the CoC bonus this year is that to a little over the $2 million.
And then just follow up, based on the reduction of funding, what is the likelihood of new organizations being awarded funding?
And, that's hard for us to tell because that's out of our control, right? So how it works is basically we create this priority list and we rank, projects from 1 to however many projects we have, and we put them in tier 1 and tier 2 buckets. HUD then rates us as a CoC on multiple factors, on system performance measures, on our collaborative application, and then what they do is they allocate funding to the CoC based on how the CoC scores. So kind of similar how we do the priority listing is they score us as a CoC as a whole, and they go down the list and they just allocate funds until they run out of money. So it's just kind of based, we try and we work really hard, and that's why, if you currently use HMIS, you will often receive emails from us about your data quality and cleaning up your data quality and making sure that the information you enter in HMIS is as accurate as possible, because that is reported on our system performance measures. that HUD then uses to score us as a CoC. So it's important that our data is accurate, and that, that so that we can represent the CoC as accurately as possible, so that we can increase that CoC score. And so, just for historical purposes, one of our new projects got funded last year. We had two or three new projects that were submitted last year, and of those, one of them got funded. In previous the year previous to that, our new projects didn't get funded. So it's really just kind of, again, it's based on HUD and how our CoC scores, if we will get new funding or not. I seen this question coming in from Rebecca from the chat. Can you send that email into the NOFO inbox? And I will, it's at the end, unless Sean, you can answer it right away. If not, then I can follow up with you after that. Okay, so new project scoring is done a little bit differently than renewals. So because the renewals, the projects have to use HMIS, we actually have data that we can use to score and measure them against. Some of our new projects do use HMIS, but they weren't required to, based from HUD, and so we just really don't have data to use. So we score it based on your application. So the application that you submit in eSnaps, we, when I say we, I mean the NOFO committee, looks at your application and looks at kind of like these 4 key metrics. So what is your overall experience working with the proposed population? What is the overall design of housing and supportive services? The timeliness of getting folks housed, and then there's also a financial component that they look at. So that, again, they take your narrative of how you answer the application and use that to score, to provide you a score. And then basically kind of similar to the renewal process is the new project applications are then scored against each other and ranked accordingly into tier 2. So here is just some dates, and this will also all be posted on our website. But if you are a new project and you are thinking of applying, we ask that you submit a letter of intent. And Sean posted the link to the letter of intent in the chat. This is a non-binding letter of intent, but we do ask if you're even thinking of it. Even if you're like, well, I don't know, I would ask that you submit a letter of intent. This is helpful for planning. So we have to work with the NOFO committee to make sure that they have the bandwidth to review all applications. So like, for example, one year we got 22 applications. So we use this for planning to make sure that we have enough reviewers on the NOFO committee to be able to review all your applications. It's also a way for us to kind of look to make sure that your program is eligible. So like some of the questions on the letter of intent will say, what is your proposed project type? What is the populations that you serve? So it's also a way for us to kind of, before you complete that full application in eSnaps, the letter of intent will help us flag any areas that we may have concern or any red flags that we may see to, hopefully help mitigate that before you submit the full application. So we ask that you submit those by August 1st. And then all applications, both new and renewal, need to be submitted in eSnaps by August 28th by 2 p.m. We will not accept any late applications. And so if your application is not in by 2 p.m. on August 28th, you will not be eligible to apply for this year's funding. HUD has some really strict deadlines that we have to meet. So in order to meet their deadlines, we have to enforce our own internal deadlines. And so this is one that we have no flexibility on.
Can you clarify, are LOIs only for new projects, or are renewal projects required to submit them as well?
Yes, good question. LOIs are just for new projects. For renewal projects, I would just ask if you are not, for some reason, you are not planning to reapply this year, just to email the NOFO box to give us a heads up. But if you are planning to apply, there's nothing that you need to do as far as renewal projects. So it's just the letter of intent is for new projects only. And then September 13th, we, the CoC, so the process is, the applications are submitted on the 28th. They are turned around and given to the NOFO committee to review and rank. And then the board to approve the NOFO committee's recommendation. And so all that is going to be happening between, August 29th and September 13th. So on September 13th, the CoC will notify any project applicants about whether, they were accepted and ranked or reduced. So if you are a renewal project, you'll get an email from us that says, here's how you score, here's how you ranked. You will get your scores way before that. And if you're a new project, you'll get an email from us that says, the NOFO committee reviewed your application. It will be approved and ranked, and here's where you ranked. Or it was not approved and the reason why. And if any of the applications or budgets need to be reduced, we'll also have that in that email. So expect that on September 13th. On September 18th, MDHI will post on its website pretty much the application package. So that will include all parts. So that's the collaborative application, that's the priority listing, that's all of the attachments. And so basically, that is an opportunity for anybody to review and provide any feedback, any comments, and we will have a method to providing feedback and also open office hours. And then based on that feedback, we will be making, any necessary changes to the application. We will send it to the CoC board to get final approval and then get it submitted to HUD on the 28th of September. And then I will, like I said, we'll be posting these this on our website, but then here is just some helpful resources. There's the, the competition where you can find the full notice of HUD. Here's the eSnaps portal. So that's how to get, guidance of how to create the application, create logins. We have, like in similar years, we created a blog. And so you can save this link and it will be updated. So you don't have to kind of like search our website to see where all the information is. We will be making updates to this link accordingly. So for example, right now, it is the one that provided the information for this webinar. Once this webinar is over this week, I will be updating that with timelines and other useful links for information. And then as it proceeds along the deadline, any information will be posted there as well as sent out. For any questions that you have, if the question is regarding like the overall NOFO process, you can send those questions to the HUD email. So that's cocnofo@hud.gov. Because we are in an active competition, their responses are very limited and the guidance that they can provide us is very limited. But you can submit there. If you happen to have any problems with eSnaps, creating the profile, getting your password reset, your application, getting the right application, you would email that to eSnaps@hud.gov. Any other questions, or if you're just kind of confused on where to submit your questions, you can submit it to the nofa@mdhi.org email, and myself or somebody else will respond to you. So I would just say as in guidance, as a quick guide, just send everything to the NOFA inbox, and then we can direct you like, oh, nope, that needs to go to eSnaps, or no, that needs to go to HUD directly. And then questions. And I can pull up the chat. Let's see if there's any questions. So you can either type in questions, or if you want to raise your hand to ask a question, either way works. And I'm actually
we have a question from Kim. DV bonus amount of 1.3 million. Or is the DV bonus amount 1.3 million an additional pot of money beyond tier 1 and tier 2 funding allocations?
Yes, it is. And so how that works is that's an additional pot of money for, again, those serving survivors of domestic violence. And based on, we would still rank that project as part of a new project. And so then what HUD does is HUD reviews them. And if he, if HUD, based on our score and all the other factors, if they decide to fund the DV project, they pretty much pull that out of our ranking. So we still have to rank it in tier 1 and tier 2. But then they will pull that additional funding, like they pull that out for the DV funding, and then that would, like if there would happen to be a project underneath, then they would move that project up, if that makes sense. So it is an addition, but it still has to be ranked in tier 2.
And Katie had a question about the initial page of the portal. Does MDHI assign the application number, or does the applicant put that in?
I think you guys put that in. I think that's just on the eSnaps portal, the application number is just for your tracking. That's not something that we would assign.
And is it just a placeholder?
Yeah, I think it's just a placeholder. I don't know that that's used for anything. I think it may be like if you had more than a couple projects. So there are a few agencies that have more than one project. I think that's just a way for them to kind of separate it as the application number. We don't use it. MDHI doesn't use it, or the NOFO committee doesn't use it.
And then just do they make up that number, or does it come from somewhere?
If it's not, so in eSnaps, and that may be something like once the guides are out for eSnaps, that should be covered under there. Anything that they pre-populate some of the fields based on stuff. So if it's not pre-populated, then that's one that you can just make up. But there is, I would just recommend in the instruction guide that's not up yet, it should outline, like follow it. It does a step-by-step. And so, and there's also some videos up on that eSnaps website to walk through. So I just recommend, reading the guidance and walking through it step by step. So it should clarify that in there.
Not seeing any other questions unless I missed something. Feel free to post again if I did.
Yeah, and so, we will stay on for questions. If you don't have any questions, feel free to log off. And then again, look to our website for updated information. But if you have any questions as you're working through, please reach out to the NOFA at MDHI email, and we will get back to you. But thank you guys all for attending and spending time this morning. And again, we will stay on if any additional questions come up.
Since there is time, I know my question is specific to us, so sorry about that, but we never know what